One, we are here for the PLSD regular board meeting. Mr. Jenkins, can you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Niekamp. Here. Mr. Kristoff.
Here.
Mrs. Sanders.
Here.
Mr. Lopez.
Here.
Mrs. Olszewski.
Here.
If everyone could please stand, follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have a motion and a second for approval of the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Jenkins, can you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Niekamp.
Yes.
Mr. Kristoff.
Yes.
Mrs. Sanders.
Yes.
Mr. Lopez.
Yes.
Mrs. Olszewski.
Yes.
Section B is for public participation. At this point, I don't have anyone requesting to speak, but there will be an opportunity at the end of the meeting if people want to address the board at that time for anything that's covered on the agenda. Next section is section C, which is recognitions of student athletes. And I believe that's going to be Mr. Aprilli.
No, I'm just kidding.
No, you have a chair. Oh. You can have my vote too, if you like.
Good evening. Every year at the end of each season, we recognize athletes for their accomplishments as well as our athletic programs for their advancement and successful seasons. In the fall, we were unable to do that due to our situation with COVID and et cetera. So tonight, we're going to catch up with both our fall and winter athletes. And first, we'd like to start with the Central Football Program and ask Coach Sherritt to come up. The Central Football Program this past fall was OCC Central Division champions, regional champions, and state runner-up. Another tremendous year for the Tigers and Coach Sherritt, his staff, and their players. Congratulations, Coach. Would you like to say something? Certainly. He said his mask won't allow him to talk. So congratulations, Coach. That's a fumble.
Recovered though.
By home team.
That's right.
We have 3 Central football players who also would be recognized this evening. However, 3 of them will not be here for a variety of reasons. First, Nick Mosley, who was 3rd team All-Ohio. He is a member of our track team and unfortunately can't be here tonight, but he's practicing. So he's continuing his athletic advancement. Congratulations, Nick. Next, we have Lorenzo Stiles. Lorenzo cannot be here tonight because he has graduated earlier and is already participating at Notre Dame. But some of Lorenzo's accomplishments: OCC Player of the Year 2020, 2020 Central District Player of the Year on offense, 2020 State Player of the Year offensively, 1st team All-OCC, All-District and State, 2020 Most Valuable Player, school record, most varsity starts and career receiving yards. Congratulations to Lorenzo Stiles. And our last football player in the Central program is Keaton Snyder. As Coach just shared with me, he is sick this evening and unable to make it. Some of Keaton's accomplishments: 2020 Combine Medal winner, 1st team All-OCC, All-District and All-State, 2020 Best Lineman Award. Congratulations to Keaton on well-deserved honors.
Thanks, Dave.
Again, congratulations to the Central Football Program on their team accomplishments as well as the individual awards. Staying with the Central Athletic Program, next, I hope I pronounce this right, Cohen Dross. Is Cohen here this evening? Recognizing his accomplishments. Too many sheets. He was second team All-Ohio, OCC Player of the Year in the Buckeye Division. So congratulations to Cohen. J.C. Arnett, a member of the Central Bowling Program. Here comes J.C. Some of J.C.'s accomplishments: two-time MVP, set a school record for the highest average for a season, All-OCC First Team Central Division, selected to the Super 12 bowling team for Central Ohio, led team to the district tournament, and was a state participant in the state bowling tournament this past year. Congratulations, J.C. Congratulations to all our Central athletes as well as the football program for their accomplishments this past year. Moving on to the North Athletic Program. Our first athlete would be Nick Whitehead. Nick, if you're here, come on up.
We need.
Nick's accomplishments: qualified for the state meet, first team All-OCC and All-District, had a PR which put him in the top 10 of all runners in Pickerington's cross-country history. Congratulations, Nick. Next, member of our men's soccer program at North, Uche Odemina. Uche, if you would come forward. Some of Uche's accomplishments: Ohio Scholastic Soccer Coaches Association second team All-Ohio, United Soccer Coaches of America All-Mid-East Regional Honors, and team MVP. His coaches say he has a positive attitude in the leadership on and off the playing field. Congratulations, Uche. Our next student athlete from North I know is not here, Tori Haggett. Tori has already graduated and moved on to Western Michigan, but some of her accomplishments: first team All-OCC, first team All-District, second team All-State. Was a district champion as the team won the district and advanced to the regionals. She was voted by team Best Offensive Player of the Year and captain. Congratulations to Tori. Another member of the soccer program, Jackie Norris. Jackie, are you here? Here comes Jackie. Another member of our women's soccer program, some of Jackie's accomplishments: voted most valuable player and captain, first team All-OCC, first team All-District, second team All-State. Again, was a member of the district championship soccer program and regional semifinalist. Congratulations, Jackie. Last but not least, Marcus Schwartz, member of our North Swimming Program. Some of Marcus's accomplishments: state qualifier in the 200 IM, 200 IM sectional champion, 200 IM OCC champion, 100 breaststroke sectional champion, third at OCC's in the 100 breaststroke. Congratulations to Marcus. Again, congratulations to all our student athletes for their individual accomplishments, as well as our teams in what was the most very challenging year in keeping our programs on the field and in the athletic arena with our COVID situation. Thanks for attending. Have a great evening.
I don't want to speak. Your hand in my hair. I know, I'm in the hot seat.
I would like to take this time to introduce Bill Andrews, Director of PYAA, and I'd like him to come up and I'd like to read this award to him. It's a Friends of Education Award. So Bill, as you're coming up, I'll read this. The Pickerington School Board of Education recognizes and applauds Bill Andrews and the Pickerington Youth Athletic Association as a friend of education. This award honors individuals in the community whose leadership, acts, or support have significantly benefited education employees, or students of our school district. Thank you for making Pickerington schools proud. I'd like to hand this to him and say a few little words about him. He's had a wonderful relationship with Pickerington schools for multiple years, let alone our community as a whole. So I'd like to take this time to turn this over to him to have him talk a little bit about the relationship with Pickerington schools and about other items.
Thank you. Yep. Well, first of all, I didn't realize I was getting noticed or notified and getting an award. So thank you for that. That was a surprise. So again, one of the reasons I'm here is to talk about the relationship that Pickerington Youth Athletic Association has with the school district. I've been a member of, or a resident of Pickerington since like 1990. So that's back when you came down 256, it was one road, and where Kroger is, you had one house, and the Red Barn was on the left where Marcus Theater is. So obviously our school district has grown considerably. But I just want to take a couple minutes, which I thought originally was coming forward, to talk about the relationship that we have with the school district, as well as the upcoming levy. So as many of you probably know, I mean, we have 10 sports that we offer to the kids within the school district. And any given year, we have about 3,000 kids that play within PYA sports. All 3,000 of those kids reside within this school district. We don't bring kids in from other districts to play in our programs. We've got a wonderful complex down on 256, but many sports we can't use a complex for obvious reasons for basketball. So we use the school district facilities for many sports. So you have given us, the school district and the school board, the privilege of using many of the facilities. And I see Matt back there in the back. So at Tuesday, we use Tuesday Elementary on Saturdays for games, and thank you for that. So for example, so basketball, we have 1,000 kids. A typical year to play. This year we didn't for pandemic reasons. So in return, and I just want to give a little list here, and Vince and I talked kind of a laundry list of what we've done. So through the years, so we've given new tennis nets, basketball standards, the bleachers at Ridgeview Auxiliary Gym we donated. We donated the original basketball scoreboards at Diley and at Harmon. 2 years ago, we donated the new scoreboard here in the gym at Heritage, as well as a new scoreboard at Ridgeview. Also through the years, we have given $1,000 a year for well over 10 years each of the basketball booster programs in exchange for use of the field house. For our Thanksgiving tournament, we've donated money to the bowling programs. We donate annually to the Central Football Program, putting an ad in there. We recently gave North Football Program a golf cart, as well as giving license plates to some of our recent state champs. So based on the relationship and partnership that we have with the school district, so I'm here to inform you that PYA Executive Board and sports are going to support the upcoming school levy. It is something that's needed. So again, I've been here since 1990. And this simply isn't an athletic connection. So we are the overcrowding of schools. We see all the subdivisions that are being built, the one that's east of North High School, the one that's backs up to the PYA complex. So we've already put signs out in our complex, support the levy. And on a personal note, so I officiate 2 varsity sports. I go across the entire state in different communities. And what I see other districts and communities doing, I mean, we're behind the times. Whether it's new buildings, updated buildings. So I think now is a time, and I'm just going to endorse it, that we support the levy and get what our kids deserve. That's do an updated facility. So I've gone on and on. So I just want to take the time. I appreciate all your time and everything you do. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Appreciate it.
Okay, so the next section is our presentation section. Dr. Briggs?
Yeah, board members, this evening, we're very fortunate. We have 2 presentations on the agenda. The first one is from our Pride Diversity Committee, and I just wanted to take a second to kind of give you a background. It used to be our Diversity Committee in the school district, and we recently converted this to our Pride, which stands for Promoting Respect, Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity and Pride, and Equity, and that stands for our Pride. And I've been very impressed with this committee. I had a chance to attend a couple of their meetings, also discuss some district initiatives that we have going on. And the thing that impresses me the most about this group is the fact that we're being proactive instead of reactive on a lot of issues that are facing our school district. So I'm really excited to introduce them tonight, but also to say that the work that they're doing, you're going to see the second presentation talking about, obviously, our community advisory committees. But I see this as being an extension to the work and the support that we're doing in those committees. I think we could work together collaboratively to address issues that are facing our school district. So I'm extremely excited to introduce Dee and Jared. Are you both presenting? Come on up, and Dee Kopus and Jared Moore are going to share with you a little bit more about our Pride Committee. Thank you.
All right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jared Moore, and I'm the principal at Harmon Middle School. And I'm one of the founding members of the Pride Committee, or the Diversity Committee, if you will. The Diversity Committee was founded about 5 years ago by the former Human Resources Director, Mrs. Deborah Porter Sawyer, with looking to proactively address very quickly changing community and community demographics with the effort to make sure that every person in the Pickerington school community felt like a member of the school community. So as Dr. Briggs mentioned, PRIDE stands for Promoting Respect, Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity, aka PRIDE. And throughout this presentation and the next one, you will repeatedly hear the acronym DEI. And DEI stands for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Again, that's diversity, equity, and inclusion. And those aren't just buzzwords for this committee. That is work that we are very passionate about and want to see through for our community, whether for both our staff members and our kiddos. With that, I introduce our committee. We have Dr. Heather Hedgepath, who's our Human Resource Director, Dee Kopus, to my right. Mr. Matt Dansby, Principal at Tusing. Mrs. Christina Hulse, our Special Education Director. Dr. Kathy Eli and Jesse Burr, who head up our social work and our social emotional learning work, as well as myself and Elizabeth Curtis, who is our EL coordinator for students who are new to the country or speaking a second language. In addition, we have Mrs. D'Amica Bates, assistant at Tusing, Dr. Raquel Major Holland from Sycamore Elementary, Dr. Michael Jackson, no relation, to at Central High School, and then our parent representative, is Katiana Pennington, who had a couple heroes at Harmon, actually. For us, we wanted, as you see the faces, wanted to ensure that they're not just diverse in appearance, but also that they're diverse in thought and experience. Because just because you look the same doesn't mean you share the same experiences, especially when you get into dynamics of social injustice or socioeconomics. We have representatives from across all grade levels and that takes us to our mission. Our mission is a little bit wordy, but when you break it down, it's pretty simple. We want to promote advocacy and awareness of diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, in order to transform experiences and outcomes for all members of the PLSD school community. And there are some key words I want to emphasize in that mission: advocacy, awareness, and transform. Because to advocate, one must be aware. With awareness, advocacy, and action, we can transform a community, specifically this time our school community. But again, that all goes back to awareness. Knowledge is the key, which is a very fitting phrase here in education. So that takes us to what we're trying to do. And this is a very general visual summary of our strategic work, which I think does a very good job and flows very appropriately into the work of the Citizens Advisory Committee as well. And again, there's that word awareness again. If you're knowledgeable of what's going on, you're better able to address it, adapt to it, and recognize it. So we want to grow the equity lens that we have by getting a greater awareness of the cultures and the people who make up this community today, and expand the vision of what a community means based on that representation. And that leads to capacity. That means in our schools, we're putting in the work to help our adults' minds grow so that we can better serve our students. And again, through that, we can find transformation, hopefully not only in the learning experiences for our kids, but just in the experience they have at school. A lot of what happens at school is outside of the classroom, and some of the lessons our kids learn most in school have nothing to do with the curriculum. So it's very, very important that we attend to these matters. And as it says in the blue on the side, it is very personal. It is very, very personal work, and it has to start inside before it can ever become institutional or systemic. So that is, in general, the work that we feel is important for our committee and where we need to move what we need to do to move forward. And as I mentioned, you'll see that this fits very neatly in with some of the efforts of our Citizens Advisory Committee, as Ms. Kopis will share with you.
Again, I'm Ms. Kopis. I'm the principal at Violet Elementary, but I'm also the co-facilitator for the Pride Committee. And this year, we have really worked to put action behind words. That was very important as a group for us to try to make sure that we weren't just coming together to speak, but coming together to build some actionable items. These 5 bullet points was put together before the CAC came together. And when we took a closer look at these 5 bullet points, they mirror the 5 subgroups that make up that CAC and what we've done. So I think that perfectly aligns with some of the work that will be done in the district, and we're excited to be a part of that journey. So during the time of CAC came together, we just have a little display of those Pride Committee members who were also part of CAC. So they were a part of that hard work. They were part of giving their time and energy to put in some information or give their perspective on the school side with that committee. So we had Jared Moore, of course, with Facility Awareness and Engagement Team. We had Kathy Ely as our student engagement piece. We had Dr. Hedpath and Matt Dansby, a part of the recruitment and retention. We didn't have a member in the curriculum area. And then for discipline was myself and Christina Hall. So we have been a part of that work. We understand the hard work that went through that whole process to determine the needs. It was necessary work. And as the Pride Committee, we look forward to those actionable items that has been recommended and taken up by the board to move forward in this Pride Committee. So the Pride Committee also has subcommittees. One is our communications subcommittee that began a newsletter this year to provide additional information out to every district staff member. Is also on the website to share with community that we started celebrating just the different cultures of our district. We also put together a survey to our staff because we wanted to know their background, their thoughts, so we can move from there. We also have a culture and climate subcommittee where we look at the data. We look at what are our students saying through the panorama data. What are they telling us about their experiences in school? From that, we can take that information, that data, and we can create action plans. We also have professional learning subcommittee, which we will link, and we have had conversation with Dr. Howard as far as ways to continue the work once she has departed from her work as a consultant, to how we can continue that professional learning in the district so that we don't lose any steps. We also are learning from Dr. Natasha Bowen, who is a professor at Ohio State, who is also providing some great insight on how we can move as a committee to ensure that the work continues in a very efficient and proficient way. So as we move forward, we look forward to the work, and it's something that every member is passionate about. And this year, our motto is, it's all about action. So we are ready for that. We are energized for that as each and every member of that committee. So I want to thank the board for allowing us time to give you a short synopsis of who we are as a Pride Committee. Yeah.
And I would like to just make one more comment and kind of reinforce again that the focus of our committee is to advocate and to bring awareness so that we can transform this district. A lot of questions came up during the Citizens Advisory Committee. A lot of questions have come up in our classrooms and in the office from people asking, being very candid and asking, what can I do when it comes to matters of diversity, equity, and inclusion? The best thing that I said, the starting point is awareness. We can all learn, we can all grow. All it takes is for you to take a minute to step back, step outside of yourself, and take a moment to ask a question or listen to somebody who looks different than you, perhaps looks the same as you do, but has had a different experience than you. And that's really what it's about. It's if you're sitting in the audience today, or you're watching on YouTube or wherever you're at, please remember it starts with your awareness, and that's the interest in seeking to get to know your neighbor. And that's it.
Thank you, guys.
Can I make a quick comment? I had the group that had the student engagement group, and we happened to have had Dr. Healy in our group. So when they mentioned the panorama data, oftentimes as board members or community members, we hear things, parents hear things, but this data is coming directly from all of our children, and it is amazing, even down to our elementary kids, what they're telling as far as how they're feeling and what's going on. So when people mention this, I'm not sure if there's a full understanding of just how detailed and specific and wonderful that information is. So I just wanted to comment on it. So it's been great.
And it's a great transition, actually. And the one thing that impressed me the most about talking to the Pride Committee members is the fact that we have 57 different languages spoken in our school district.
Mm-hmm.
And that reaches out and tells you there
the need for us to have the work that we're doing with the board and with our Pride Committee. So I'm excited in the direction we're headed. Clay, with your permission, I will go ahead and lead into our second presentation, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Board members, this evening, we are very, very fortunate to have Dr. Ariana Howard with us this evening. She is a master trainer, a leading cultural diversity expert. 11 years into her education career, Dr. Howard launched Plant a Seed Educational Consulting, LLC. She wanted to tear down the barriers between families and schools and put an end to the blaming and shaming she witnessed. Dr. Howard is a highly sought-after trainer and consultant. She possesses extensive educational experiences and effectively facilitated radical work with school leaders, resulting in epic training and learning environment. Her charismatic presence and trademark content, radical learning spaces, draw you to the edge of your discomfort, daring you to dive deeply into challenging you to question, how can I do better? How can I do better? As the eldest of three raised in a poor single-parent household, Dr. Howard has intimate knowledge of poverty, racism, and generational trauma. She's an active community member and has authored numerous articles. Dr. Howard lives in Columbus, Ohio, where she maintains her blog, The Radical Educator, and her YouTube channel, Radical Learning Spaces. Dr. Howard has provided PD to our administrative team this fall, provides consulting to our Pride Committee, and has completed building level training in all 14 buildings to this point. Dr. Howard has worked with many schools in Central Ohio area, including New Albany, Reynoldsburg, and Whitehall. And Dr. Howard also works with some colleges and universities in their teacher preparation as part of their schools of education, including Ohio Dominican, where we made contact with Dr. Howard initially. So Dr. Howard, welcome again to Pickerington Local School District, and it is all yours.
Thank you for that warm introduction. I am going to start with sharing my screen and get this conversation underway. All right. So here is the plan for my time this evening. I'm going to give a quick introduction. We'll talk about the summary of work to date that I have been able to provide. We'll talk about next steps. Now we're going to engage in some activities where I want to equip those here this evening with some tools for how we move through those next steps. In addition to the introduction Dr. Briggs gave, I was born in Mansfield, Ohio. I don't know if anyone knows where that is. It's about an hour north of Columbus. After graduating high school, I came to Columbus, where I currently reside, and attended the Ohio State University, earning my bachelor's in human development, a master's of education in math and English, and a doctorate in literacy studies. I have been in education ever since. I started out as a preschool teacher, served for a few years as a middle school teacher, a guidance counselor, a high school administrator. I then transitioned into the trauma field, working both as a coach and a supervisor. I have supervised pre-service teachers. I've presented at national conferences, and I am published. And as Dr. Briggs shared, I am proud as a business owner. In 2017, I launched my consulting firm, Plant a Seed. All right, I want to give a summary of work to date in the partnership with Pickerington. So back in October, I was contacted and had a meeting with Dr. Zach Howard, Dr. Hedgepeth, and Dr. Philibum. And during that conversation, we created a plan of attack for this school year. And part of that plan was to provide 2 rounds of a 90-minute training with district administration. And that occurred the month of November and the month of December. And at the end of that second round, administrators were invited to schedule building-specific trainings. And so from January to March, felt like a marathon, but we got it done. All 14 schools signed up and received between 1 and 3 hours of training. And the exciting part is that there are schools still continuing the work. I am in conversation and partnership with 7 of those 14 schools who are scheduling trainings. We're having coaching sessions with administration, even talking about plans for next school year. Now, I want to take pause for just a moment to acknowledge that 1 to 3 hours of training is certainly not enough to move the needle. However, this did provide staff the opportunity to engage one-on-one with me, right? To learn of me and my journey, and to also build trust and rapport in the hopes that a productive long-term partnership could be established. And this initial round of training also provided the opportunity to identify readiness and engagement within each building. I want to share with you some of the survey results. So these are the survey results from administration. And here are some long form survey response feedback. I'm not sure if the folks in the back of the room can see, so I'm going to pick out just a couple. One says, I appreciate that the subject topic is now a part of the discussion in the district. I understand the complexity of the subject. However, silence does not make it right or an avenue to change. And I even want to share with you a not so positive feedback. It says, unfortunately, this training creates a whole new set of biases for those that are trying to get a hold of their cultural challenges and growth. There is not enough acknowledgement of her bias throughout the process to help others to be honest and upfront about theirs as they enter into certain situations. It is important that presenters of this content model this for their audience. And one final comment I'll read at the bottom. Wow, we've received several training sessions over the years, but this is the first time I'm left truly wanting more, especially ongoing discussion with my colleagues, largely in part because Dr. Howard has a way of hitting home with the topics and is so engaging. This isn't to say that I didn't think there's room for growth in the past, because we all can continue to learn and become better, but Dr. Howard's delivery is the best. And I wanted to include a not so positive response because that is also a part of this work. And a part of my role is to support districts in moving through moments, even when everyone is not on board. So here are the survey results from the 14 building specific trainings. And here are some long form survey responses. I'll just pick two, a positive and a negative. Your way of presenting is so confident and refreshing. We don't need another know-it-all presenter with all the answers telling us how to do what we've been doing for the past decade or so. You are different, so calm, so not in a hurry. Again, it's quite refreshing. I feel like you take us on a journey with you rather than tell us about the journeys you've already completed. One final comment, I did not receive any information I felt I could use, although I wasn't sure what to expect. I was surprised by a comment a staff member made, but then there was no follow-up on how she should handle the situation. And so again, we have majority positive survey responses, but those who are not engaging in the work, who did not have a positive response, deserve to have space as well and deserve to be supported as well. And so March 2nd, I met with district office personnel and provided some recommendations for next steps. One of those recommendations was administrative support. In my conversation with leaders who were wanting to engage in the work, wanting to take the next step, but unsure how to do so, I want to be there to provide the support that they require. Another recommendation for next step was small group work. In my experience, lasting systemic change happens in focused small group work with educators, specifically speaking. If we're asking to change mindsets, if we're asking teachers to become aware of bias and how this shows up in the classroom, This is the result of intense, focused, small group work. Third recommendation was community healing. We'll talk about how to walk through that in just a moment. And then the last piece of a recommendation was to align the work of the Pride Committee and the Citizens Advisory Committee. Now, simultaneously, the Citizens Advisory Committee was doing the work so that we could move through this alignment. I know that they presented their findings at a March meeting. I was unable to attend that meeting, but I was granted access to the materials that each of those 5 groups created. And the ask was to align the work. How do we take those 5 conversations and all of the hard work that was put into creating actionable steps? How do we take the work and conversations that I've been having with the Pride Committee and with building administrators? How do we take all of these moving pieces and create a common framework for moving through to the next step? So what I will share with you now is what I see as emerging themes between the Citizens Advisory Committee, the Pride work, and the conversations I've been able to have in various parts of the district. And so that first theme is student development. There were some asks, some actionable items raised from the Citizens Advisory Committee for teaching students how to think and talk about DEI. There was also a request for student ambassadors to develop and support the creation of student ambassadors. There was also an ask to create compulsory DEI activities required throughout the curricula. There was an ask to pay attention and tune into the climate that students experience and to receive their feedback and respond in actionable ways. There was also an ask to consider barriers to student involvement, particularly along the areas of extracurricular activities and recognition. And in each of these action steps, you will see communication and a resource library. I know we have all understood and are learning the importance of communication, as well as having resources to access as we raise our awareness, as Mr. Moore so importantly pointed out. The second emerging theme that I see across this work are family, school, community partnerships, a shared vision that all stakeholders work together to create, and something that I am calling common communion. So there is some healing that can certainly take place in this district, and families, schools, and communities spending time together in the same space, simply getting to know one another can aid in that healing process. There's an ask for some programming around this partnership, a network of resources with community stakeholders, a development of ambassadors and liaisons to keep this work aligned and moving in the right direction. I've introduced this idea of non-traditional family involvement because as we think about the ways that our families are involved, they may be supporting their children in ways that we do not see. And so it's important for us to rethink this idea of what it means to be an involved family. Again, you will see communication and a resource library. The next to last theme that emerged were around policies and curricula. There was lots of conversation in multiple Citizens Advisory Committee groups about best practices concerning DEI at all levels, at the teacher level, the leader level, the department level, day-to-day best practices that contribute to climate, both for students and adults. When it comes to reprimand for adults, what are those DEI best practices? And in terms of student policies, there were things such as discipline and gifted and talented and special ed recognition, and how can we create equitable policies around those student policies. There was also an ask to monitor assess, and adapt these best practices. So once we engage in the work, we identify the needs, we instill those best practices, an ongoing cycle of monitoring, assessing, and adapting as needed. In terms of equity policies for both students and adults, what are those ways that we can create equitable, safe spaces for everyone? There was also an ask to create a framework for DEI responsivity in curricula, PBIS models, and SEL models. So again, examining how culturally competent, how equitable, how inclusive are our curricula and recognition models for our students. And again, a framework for communication and development of a resource library. The last emerging theme was around faculty and staff development. There was an ask for the creation of a framework for DEI training. And there were several focus areas identified within that framework. Instructional and leadership best practices, criticality, data and feedback, culturally responsive teaching, trauma-informed practices, equity, at-risk, anti-racist teaching and learning, students and families who are speakers of other languages, discipline, grit and growth mindset. There was an ask to have ambassadors at every level and to support and develop those ambassadors throughout the years. And finally, communication and a resource library. And so taking those 5 conversations, taking the work of the Pride Committee, taking the conversations we've had throughout the district this school year is a large task. And to compile that all into one page is certainly a high-level summary, but I am excited to present this as a framework to support the next step of the conversation that the district has in putting DEI on the front lines and creating those actionable steps. I want to close with a couple of areas of consideration and some tools for how to move through these next steps. As administrators, as district leaders take on this work, I offer the invitation to consider each leader, each administrator developing a plan with SMART goals. So looking at what they're already doing in terms of DEI, and then thinking about where they can begin to make gains in other areas and create a plan with SMART goals. It's also important for us to consider who is already doing what. I have not been in partnership with the district for very long, but I have been privy to conversations of work that is being done in spaces throughout the district. And so it's important for us to recognize and allow those to step up and take lead over those things that they are already doing. And then lastly, what are the conditions necessary for the success of moving the needle in terms of DEI work in this district? One of the major conditions necessary for success is working toward a common goal. From where I stand, I can see that the goal is common. Optimal outcomes for students, safe and equitable learning spaces. What I also see are stakeholders standing at different points looking toward this goal. We each have our own history with the district, differing life experiences, differing skill sets, and differing ideas about what it will take to reach that goal. Some of us have experience with culture change, and others of us do not. Some of us understand the complexities and red tape that the education system can bring, and some of us do not. Some of us have a personally vested interest in this work because our children attend here, and others of us do not. So how do we, standing each at a different point in this moment, get the work done? I want to invite you all for a moment to come on into Dr. Howard's class. I want to give you some tools for how we can get this work done. Some tools that I have used to help facilitate change in the face of tension. One of those is this idea of the thirds of culture change. Research shows that culture change takes about 3 to 5 years, lasting systemic culture change, that is. And within those 3 to 5 years, people will tend to self-select into one of 3 groups. 1/3 has already been doing the work on some level and will continue to do the work. There's another third of people who they will listen to the conversation, nod their head, maybe even give positive feedback, but they're yet hesitant to engage in the work. And so what they'll do is watch the first third to see how their efforts fare. And if they fare well, then they'll come on board with doing the work. And then we have a third of people who will sit back and cross their arms and say no thank you. And that's okay. We don't need everyone on board to create culture change. It is my role, my support, and my honor to help and develop the 2/3 of us who are ready for action. The next tool I want to share with you is something called the cage of oppression. We are born into a world with rules. There are systems, spoken and unspoken, that govern our daily lives. We inherited these systems. We had nothing to do with their creation, but we do participate in maintaining them. This image on the screen speaks to the systems of oppression regarding certain aspects of our identity. These systems, depending on how a person identifies or how we are perceived, grant privilege or oppression. Many of these systems are unspoken. There is no written rule in our government records, but we certainly know they exist. We can feel them. So along the top, you see various aspects of a human's identity. Ableism has to do with able-bodiedness. Heterosexism deals with who we choose to love. Creedism has to do with religion. Lookism deals with standards of beauty. Typical brain development has to do with the effects of trauma on the developing brain. Language, ageism, classism, which has to do with socioeconomic status, sexism, and racism. Now again, depending on how we identify and how we are perceived, we are either granting privilege or oppression. I want to share with you my cage of oppression. When I completed this activity in a leadership seminar, I was astounded. I found that I was over-identifying with some aspects of my identity that granted me oppression and completely ignoring the tremendous amounts of privilege that I carry with me every day. And based on where I show up, where I stand along this page, life looks and sounds different to me. And so what I want to invite you to do is a little activity. I'm going to start this timer for 2 minutes. And what I want you to do is consider where you stand in this cage of oppression. Ask yourself, how do I identify and how do others perceive me? Please, I invite you to take 2 minutes. Thank you to those who were willing to accept my invitation to consider where you stand along this cage of oppression. One more tool and I'm going to get out of your way. And it's something I call the "and" principle. For generations, many families in your district have had to live life by this principle. We've had to learn to live a double consciousness, to be proud of who we are and to learn the rules of how to play the game. We've had to teach our children that the world is a place full of possibility and hate. And this principle can be helpful in thinking about how to navigate the next steps of this work. And it's the idea that we can have seemingly conflicting emotions or ideas in the same space at the same time. We can talk about the injustice that is happening around the world, and we can instill a sense of empathy in others. We can acknowledge the frustration of life in Black and brown skin, and we can talk about the hope for the future. We can feel the emotions that come up around doing work like this, and we can take action. We can be angry about what has been done, what hasn't been done, what needs to be done, and we can be in partnership with those toward which we might feel anger. This work is messy, and it is necessary. And I want to talk lastly about an "and" principle that can be counterproductive to the work: malicious intent and fear. As parents, we become so frustrated when educators assume malicious intent of our children and punish them. But we sometimes assume malicious intent of a district when there are attempts to correct the wrongs. As families, we can be afraid that things won't change. And as leaders, we can be afraid of doing the wrong thing, and so we stand still and do nothing. I stand in the gap for all students and families who belong to every target group: LGBTQ, English language learners, special ed, Black and brown, poor, any group that has been historically marginalized. I stand in the gap. Our children are watching how we handle this moment, how we stand on opposing sides of an issue and still get the work done. We demand those around us to change. We must believe in their capacity to do so. I believe in the capacity of everyone in this room to do the work necessary to achieve the common goal of creating the richest educational experience for all Pickerington students. And I am excited about the partnership with the district, with the CAC, with the Pride Committee, and all community stakeholders to make this happen. Be the change you want to see. Thank you, board. Thank you, administrators. Thank you, families. Thank you, students, for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Howard. We really appreciate your insight and sharing with us your thoughts. And as we move forward with our discussion, and tonight, obviously, with our CAC and our Pride Committee, we're excited about the work we're doing as well. And we think this is a great first step. And we know that change, like you said, change takes time. Culture change takes time, but I'm really excited about the direction we're headed and the opportunities we're going to provide our staff and our students. So thank you.
I just had one comment. Clay asked me to remember to mention that we've had a presentation from our Pride Committee, and we've had a presentation, which will be the beginning, from Dr. Ariana Howard. So we were going to contact a representative from each of the CAC groups for a future presentation to bring this all together as a group of 3. So we will invite everyone back when we get that scheduled.
Perfect.
Maybe we should, I don't know if we're shooting for the next board meeting or not, but
It'd be just fine if you'd like it to be May the 2nd. May the 2nd? No, May
I
the
think it's
3rd.
the 3rd.
May
It's
the
2 weeks
3rd.
from tonight.
Sure, absolutely. We'll make that happen.
So if everybody can send who they would like us to contact. I know my spokespeople, neither one of them were there the last night we presented, so neither one of them presented. So I don't know who anybody would like to let us know. And
Is it a definite that it will be on May 3rd?
Yeah, let's just set it in 2 weeks. Let's just set it in 2 weeks at the next meeting.
it's definite now.
I'm sorry, I'm hearing two conflicting things. The presentation by the CAC will be at the May 3rd meeting.
Yes.
You asked if it was definite. I just said, yes, it's definite now. Clay said yes. I love talking to people now.
I know, it's rough.
Ryan, that's good? Yeah, we can make that, it's done. Okay, we'll get
Is
stuff
Dr.
out.
Howard available? Will she be available?
Yeah.
Yes? Wonderful.
Great.
Thank
Super.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was wonderful to meet you. We've heard a lot about you.
Yeah.
No, I think we're good.
I think, yeah, Dr. Howard, you're welcome to watch the rest of our meeting, but at the same time, if you have other things, that's fine too.
Clay loves to have people over his shoulder.
I do.
Watching over his shoulder when he runs the
Not too
meeting, so we'll do that.
It reminds me of Superman and Zod.
I thought you were going to say of elementary school.
Well, that too, for sure. Okay, so the next section is section E, which is our treasurer's report. Mr. Jenkins.
The minutes from the April 5th meeting are attached.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? Mr. Jenkins, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Kristoff,
Yes.
Mrs. Sanders,
Yes?
Mr. Lopez,
Yes.
Mrs. Olszewski,
Yes.
Mrs. Niekamp.
Yes.
Go ahead. Next item, I think you guys are getting probably used to these. So this is another direct pay agreement with CF Ohio to settle a BOR or Board of Tax Appeals case.
Is there a motion and a second? So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Jenkins, can you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Sanders,
Yes.
Mr. Lopez,
Yes.
Mrs. Olszewski,
Yes.
Mrs. Niekamp,
Yes.
Mr. Kristoff.
Yes.
Next item is the March financial report.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions, comments?
I wanted to, if you don't mind, Mr. Lopez, to just point out one thing. And Mr. Kristoff might be, I don't know if you had a question, Keith, did I mishear that? Then maybe not. What I wanted to point your attention to is just the cash flow and the differences between where we could end up if current budget numbers are more accurate versus if cash flow. And I hope it's helpful, because what I'm going to start doing is, if you look on page, let me blow this up here, page 3, there's a paragraph under the cash balance that says for fiscal year 21, we are forecasting right now to spend 4.3 million more than we receive in revenue. But then, was that helpful? That note that according to our current cash flows, though, that could drop to an operating deficit of only about $882,000. So we'll land somewhere in the middle of those two. But if the current cash flow estimates end up being 100% accurate, that would be the number. So I didn't know if that was helpful to see those two. It's in multiple other graphs and places, but I just wanted to call that to everyone's attention to ask, was that even a thing, or just keep it in the charts? It's a thing. I'll take it as a thing.
I liked it.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all I had, unless there's other questions about the report.
I mean, our forecasts become closer to reality closer we get to the end of the school year,
I
right?
guarantee you by June 30th, I'll be 100% right for this year.
Wow. I really wasn't looking for that answer, but okay.
Yes, that's a very good
Okay.
point. By June 30th, everything is actual for that year.
Because some might think that that's a pretty good swing, but at the end of the day, in 130 some odd $1 million, that's really not a big swing.
And it is, it's all about perspective.
Right.
That if you look at the days cash, you've got the line that shows our forecasted operating deficits. You know, those are a reality right now. It's just a matter of can we trim them and tidy those up and have them drop. It's probably not going to shift back the other direction in the near future, but we've done, I think, a pretty good job this year of being as fiscally efficient and responsible as we possibly can, given the circumstances. So
Yeah, I think we do that every year, candidly. But this has been a challenging year, and your office has risen to the challenge. Any new news from our friends downtown? I thought I read someplace that they were going to try and bring back some version of the cup bill.
it was introduced as the a House bill's response was the new formula is introduced. In fact, the news flash came out last week. I cannot remember the House bill number.
It's okay.
But the Cup-Patterson formula
Yeah.
is the House's version of taking up the charge on school funding, yes. And in general, that would be a fortuitous formula for the district. They're different.
Does that mean good?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah, there's different pieces of it that are good. There's different pieces of it not so good, but when you take it all as a whole, that formula would be advantageous for the district. But I'm not sure between now and June 30th, there's lots of changes that can occur. But yes, it has been taken up.
All right.
That's good to hear, because typically people get very excited about a change in the funding formula, which typically is not advantageous to our district, so.
Correct. The acid test will be what the Senate does with it. The House has always been supportive of it. When it gets to the Senate, they take a slightly dimmer view. So we'll see. That's all I have.
Okay, I believe we have a motion in a second. Mr. Jenkins, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Lopez,
Yes.
Mrs. Olszewski,
Yes.
Mrs. Niekamp,
Yes.
Mr. Kristoff,
Yes.
Mrs. Sanders.
Yes.
Last item, scroll to the very bottom on donations. You can see we have 2 or 3 that came in this month. The Takedown Club at North made a donation, and actually 2, actually 3. Now that I look at all 3 of them there, the bottom 3 are from the Takedown Club.
Okay, tell me again how this works.
You then make a separate employment action to employ somebody,
Yeah,
and we use the donated funds
to pay for the supplemental contract.
Correct.
Okay. So they're not creating their own supplemental because they want extra coaches. They're just offsetting the expense that we would incur.
I would not say that they're offsetting, no, in
They're
some.
funding it.
Well, they're funding it, and in some cases, they are driving some extra FTE. That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, they do in some cases have extra, and it happens on both sides of the district in both high schools.
Sure, yeah.
We've tried to accommodate where folks in our booster clubs are trying to make things happen for kids. We've tried to work with them as best we can. Doesn't always work out.
Yeah. Just for the record, I'll probably ask this question again.
That's fine.
Just be prepared.
Anything else for Mr. Jenkins? All right, so next is consent agenda. Dr. Briggs, can you take us through those items?
Yeah, board members, this evening under consent agenda items, the first one is certificated licensed personnel. We're asking the board to approve the unpaid leave of absence for the individual and the assignment as listed in the dates. We do have a non-renewal certified contract for the person as listed due to the September 24th, 2020 start date after the start of the school year. We have, and congratulations to all these individuals, we have the 2021-22 teacher contract recommendations on the agenda this evening. You have quite a list there with their limited contracts and all the individuals that we're asking for the board to approve this evening. We also have on here a certified employee contract retiree hire with Kathleen Matthews from Tucson Elementary. And that is the certified licensed personnel section of the consent agenda items. Is there any questions? Hearing none. Number 2 is support personnel. Board members, this evening, we are asking the board to approve resignations and retirements of the 2 individuals as listed, or excuse me, of the individuals as listed. We do have 1 leave of absence on the agenda this evening for the paraprofessional and the dates. We have support personnel recommendations. As you can see, there's 2 replacements we're asking the board to approve this evening. And then we have support, substitute support service recommendations, the positions, the hourly rate as listed. And then there is a resolution of intent to non-renew contract of the individual as listed per Ohio Revised Code 3319.03. And then we're also asking the board to approve this evening 2021-22 classified contract recommendations. Congratulations to these individuals. We have their names, their position, and their contract recommendation as listed. And board members, that is the support personnel section of the agenda. Is there any questions? Hearing none. The third one is the personnel supplemental contracts and stipends. Supplemental contract and stipend recommendations. We're asking the board to approve the following supplemental contracts and stipends for this school year, pending completion of all of employment materials. We have the building, the name, the assignment, the group, the step, and the salary for the individuals. We're also asking the board to approve tonight the stipends for the individuals as listed in their assignment, group, and step, and salary. And then we have a COVID event supervisors for faculty rentals to approve the following event supervisors at the rate as listed for the 3 individuals. That is the personnel and supplemental contracts and stipends. Is there any questions from board members?
Are we hiring any more of the COVID event supervisors, or
Just,
is that it for the district?
I think those are the 3 that we have at this time.
Well, I think you're asking about how many total we have now.
Yeah.
We probably have about 6 to 10 now,
Oh, okay.
and they're still,
Is there a goal, or we just,
there's no goal.
Okay.
Just as we
as it's,
work through facility rentals, in some cases, you've got some who say, hey, I'm on this weekend.
Sure.
And then the next weekend, they might say,
I'm not
I
available.
can't.
Yeah,
So we
gotcha.
have to have a rotation.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions about personnel or supplemental contracts or stipends? Hearing none. Number 4 is budget and purpose statements. We're asking the board to approve as submitted this evening. Is there any questions from board members? Number 5 is consent other. Congratulations to the students as listed for early graduation from Pickerton Alternative High School and Pickerton High School North students. We congratulate all those students as they want to graduate early. Is there any questions about the consent agenda items? Board members?
Can I go back to the COVID event supervisors? So we utilize these individuals for all non-district events, or district and non-district events that are on school property?
Non-district.
Okay,
They're used mainly for our facility rentals.
okay,
In the future, they've actually worked out so well. We had a meeting today, Mr. Aprilli, Mr. Utterbrack, and me, that having a supervisor in those scenarios is probably, it's a prudent move. As we get into, I know my son plays AAU basketball,
right,
and sometimes we parents get excited in those games.
uh-huh,
And it just is helpful to have that presence at a game to help folks remember that, we're all there for good sportsmanship, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a move that we're going to make moving forward, especially for our indoor events that involve the use of our gyms. That's normally where we can get some of those issues.
Is this a role that we can combine with our current, what do we call them?
Site managers?
Seasonal stipend holders?
Not at this time, because
Are those district events?
those are district events. That's correct.
What's the name of that stipend holder again?
Site manager.
Site manager.
And those are negotiated through the PEA agreement. So these are kind of separate items that are non-district events that are generated in many cases just by our community wanting to use our facilities.
Okay. I didn't know maybe if we could, okay. I know that's, the other one is negotiated. I just didn't know if there was any overlap or any economies of scale we could recognize, whatever that phrase is. What's that called?
Well, how can I, that $25 an hour
Yeah, I know.
is being paid for in the rental.
Yeah, I got you.
So it's not, I understand the question.
Yeah.
And the economies, really kind of becomes moot in
Okay.
that whoever rents the facility,
Is paying for
they're
the
paying that cost.
Oversight person.
Correct. That's a part of the whole rental contract. That's
Yeah,
exactly
listen,
right.
I think it's a great idea to use them moving forward. Questions may arise from an outside group and this person can, answer them or whatever.
Yep, we met about it today, and we're aware, we think, of the different groups who may have a few more questions, but it's for the safety and security of everybody. And that generally causes most people to say, okay, we understand.
Okay, great, super, thank you.
Board members, if there's not any other questions, we're asking the board to approve the consent agenda items as submitted.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved. Second.
Any other questions? Mr. Jenkins, can you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Olszewski,
Yes.
Mrs. Niekamp,
Yes.
Mr. Kristoff,
Yes.
Mrs. Sanders,
Yes.
Mr. Lopez.
Yes. Okay, so our next section is discussion action. I'm going to ask Dr. Briggs to take us through those items, but we should probably just skip number 1 and go straight.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll
that'd be
skip.
fine by me.
So we don't offend Mr. Aprilli in his retirement and ask.
And board members we brought this up in our cabinet meeting this morning. We would like to congratulate Mr. Aprilli, our Director of Student Activities. He has submitted his letter of retirement effective July 1st. I believe is marked here this evening. Mark, 43 years, is that right? 45.
Wow.
45 years in education, and that's a lot of knowledge sitting there, and we're going to miss him tremendously in the different roles that he's played in our school district and also at Bishop Hartley High School, about his experience today and the stories that has went through his experience working at Pickering. And so congratulations, Mark. We wish you the best. And thank you for your 45 years of dedication to our students and the thousands of students that you've influenced over the years. So thank you. I'm sorry, we have to do a.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second. All right. Any comments, questions? Mr. Aprilli, I want to echo Dr. Briggs and say thank you for all of your service to our district and personally myself in helping me in my board service. I truly appreciate it.
Congrats on making it to retirement.
We're all working to get
Yeah.
there. Absolutely,
Awesome. Enjoy it.
absolutely.
Okay. I believe we have a motion and a second. So Mr. Jenkins, can you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Niekamp,
Yes.
Mr. Kristoff,
Yes.
Mrs. Sanders,
Yes.
Mr. Lopez.
Yes.
Mrs. Olszewski.
Yes.
Thank you, board members. Number 2 is a simple resolution declaring impracticality. It's something that we, on the agenda this time of year, every year, for transportation purposes.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments, questions? Mr. Jenkins, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Kristoff,
Yes.
Mrs. Sanders,
Yes.
Mr. Lopez,
Yes.
Mrs. Olszewski,
Yes.
Mrs. Niekamp.
Yes.
Okay, so section H is discussion only for policy changes. I would love to tell you what those are, however, my computer has frozen on me.
Yeah, we've all
So-
sort of.
I'll share that with.
We're full red.
They are full red,
They are
and the policy
bleeding.
changes that you're seeing tonight, board members, is for promotion and retention. We did cover this morning as well, and Dr. Wood has her reviewing of the policies and marking them in red. There's quite a bit on there. But what we were able to do is actually take a look at the current Neola policy, make some adjustments. We felt met the needs of our district, especially when we're talking about promotion and retention. One of the main things that you'll see in the policy that is different is the word placement is no longer being recommended. We believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Woodruff, but we believe that promotion and retention, it's a lot cleaner with using those two terms and promoting or retaining our students instead of the placement that was in the actual older policy from before.
So placement isn't an option?
Placement will not be an option under this current. Is that correct? Go ahead, Dr. Woodruff, if you want to speak. I don't want to speak for you.
Yeah, that's my recommendation. Also, I want to apologize to you. I feel like some of the edits read first because the academic acceleration piece has been completely removed from the policy. Academic acceleration actually already exists in policy 5408.
Okay.
Kind of where it fits better as it relates to acceleration and other gifted type items. So that's especially why you see all of the red. But you will also see red where it looks like it's a strike through with some of the items. Like if you look under promotion A, B, C, and D, there's a strike through the parentheses there, and that that's misconceiving in that if those should be marked is what I'm trying to say. Unless there is a complete strike through, then we are accepting those items. Does that make sense? The editing tool that was used is misleading. That's the word I was looking for. That said, however, yeah, I am making the recommendation that we do remove the word placement, not just from the policy, but also from the administrative guidelines. It feels like a bit of a dated term, if you will. When we look at the elementary grades, they're using a standards-based system. I would argue that we really don't have a solid operational definition for what placement is. You are either retained in the grade level or you are promoted to the next grade level. So elementary uses standards-based. When you look at the high school, we're in a credit system. A student is referred to by their graduating cohort. Again, it's a bit of a moot point. We're not going to use placement at the high school level. Traditionally, the way that placement has been used is if you fail 2 courses, if you look at the middle grades, if you fail 2 courses that you are placed as opposed to promoted. Again, it feels punitive. It feels negative. It feels sort of like there's a blame there. I'd rather focus our energies on what interventions and supports we as a district can promote that student to the next grade level with the support that they need to be successful. We know that we're not retaining students as they get into those upper grades. I did elicit feedback, especially from the elementary principals. We had some discussion, and to be honest, it was pretty much a unanimous no, that placement was not a term that we felt like really was representative of how we wanted to operate. So again, that is my recommendation. That is my proposal for you to consider.
So is this primarily, are these, this policy and AG, are they primarily applied at the primary grade levels?
No, it would be for all grade levels.
I know it's across the, okay, all right.
But then when you go to the administrative guidelines in more detail are going to reference really those steps that you should be taking. That's more internal guidance for us, if you will. If you do have a student that you are considering retaining, i.e. in my mind, if they're on the road to what would have been placement, then we really, again, need to focus our energies on putting together that intervention team. We need to make parents aware. There's a timeline there of what would happen between, say, August and January. What should happen by March? These are practices that are already taking place in the district, but, this provides, I guess, greater consistency and some guidelines that we can all follow. So we're not at a place where we're talking about placement. The student either clearly needs to be retained or they'll be promoted with the intervention and the sports that they need to be successful in the next grade level.
So can I ask one last question? Because it's only been in one situation that I ever historically remember placement ever even being part of a conversation. So if a student does not pass the third grade reading, and then they go through all of the interventions
Yep.
that are to be in place, then what?
That student is still either retained or promoted. Again, the student would not be necessarily placed. Placed is promotion. Placed is moving to the next grade level. You bring up a good point, though, as it pertains to record keeping, EMIS reporting, and what we do report to the state.
And I think that's the only reason I thought about it. I thought somewhere don't they have to use the word placed instead of promoted? So-
I do not believe so.
Okay.
I can double check that, though, just to make sure that I'm not missing anything.
But that child can be promoted
Correct.
even once they've gone through and met the requirements, even though they initially did not pass that third grade reading.
Correct.
I just
Once
had
they
that
meet
discussion this morning.
proficiency
Okay, that was the only thing that I remembered, like, it coming up in historically.
Well, and we discussed that this morning in cabinet too, because like the third grade reading guarantee is so different than other areas, because when kids do meet that criteria, they can be promoted after they meet the criteria. So we discussed that as well, and we just felt, and I agree, this is just a first reading, obviously, board members, you have a chance to read this a little more in depth, and if you have questions, ask Dr. Woodruff.
Yeah,
But
and I can
Yeah,
clean up
and that was the only
editing.
one.
yeah,
I-
but take a,
Yeah,
you have a
that was
chance
the
to
only
look at
one
it.
I wondered about.
You did make me think, though, too, where you will see, I think it's in green, is also where I've updated language in reference to performance and proficiency toward grade level standards. And this just, I mean, the timing is good here because that's been especially the work of this year, especially the work during the pandemic, especially the work, when we saw students that were not being successful, that were failing, that we really redirected the conversation to how are they doing against standards? Not necessarily completion of work, but how are they doing? What assessments are we using to measure proficiency of standards? So that language has been updated in the policy as well to be consistent with really some of our philosophical beliefs.
It is interesting because the date on that administrative guidelines says 2007. No wonder it's out of
It
date.
took some time to get through it because some of the pieces are dated. And really, I mean, I cross-checked. I mean, Mr. Blackburn also helped with this. We cross-checked other board policies, what other districts are doing. And then when you kind of scroll down to the date, you see some dated items. So what the pandemic has done as well for other districts, the curriculum coordinators in Fairfield County also had the same conversation is, hey, it's time to update our procedures and our policies and make them relevant with the practices.
Listen,
No, but one thing, we did not adopt that in 2007. Certainly, it's been reviewed far more recently than that because we've only been with Neola for 3-4 years. I just didn't want people to think we had a policy that we've had on the books for 13 years that hasn't been reviewed because we would not have done our due diligence when we accepted the Neola policy.
Correct.
And we were here for that process, so it was a year-long process, so I just didn't want there to be any misconception that 13 years has gone by without us looking at something.
Is there any other questions from board members for Dr. Woodruff?
Actually, 14, it's 2021, isn't it?
Right, it is 2021.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sabrina.
Any other discussion? So we're going to go to information only. It appears that we have 3 people who are going to be pursuing, looks like master's degrees.
It is correct.
Sorry, I'm trying to go back and forth between my computer screen and my phone. Next, we have camps, which appears, thank you, that we are going to have a baseball clinic put on by
Camp of Champs.
Camp of Champs, yes, at Lakeview, PHS North and Lakeview. Next is our COVID-19 update. I know, obviously, we are back full-time at this point, and I think things are going reasonably well. I know we had a clinic for vaccinations for students up at Central last week.
Friday, yep. We had 275 students vaccinated, 16 and up, so.
So, and I think there are plans to offer that additional times. maybe?
Is Christina?
Second dose in 3 weeks. Okay. All right.
And I think too, Clay, just to piggyback on that, you know, the COVID-19 update, obviously being back in, looking at Franklin County going purple, you know, we're maintaining where we're at. We have the state level positivity data, the public health advisory system by county on here. Also for the board to review, we have our current dashboard. So, you know, we knew obviously when we go all back in that we would have situations we have to deal with, whether it's quarantine students or whether it's dealing with, you know, positive cases anyway. And we had to do that when we were in the hybrid model. So, you know, I'm very happy with our staff and obviously the excitement of having kids back in our building and on our playing fields and performing arts. And it's just been, I think, refreshing and challenging, but refreshing to get back to some sense of normalcy for our kids.
Yeah, and I have to say, I truly appreciate everyone's efforts in the buildings, the administrators, the staff, teachers, support staff, and our students for making this all work for everyone. So I truly appreciate all that. Our next section is comments and questions. So first we can take anyone from the public.
There's a hand over here.
Sure. If you can come up and just say your name for the record, please, and then we'll certainly.
Yeah, to the microphone.
To the microphone, please.
Yeah, Aaron Van Valkenburg. I've lived in Pickerington for 5 years. My kids go to the schools. So looking over, first of all, I thought the great presentation from Dr. Ariana Howard, very clear, appreciated her clarity and thoroughness. In the, is it Citizens Advisory Committee? I believe there's several groups, 5 of those. Group 2, it was the Student Lack of Diversity Knowledge Group, I believe. Under objectives, you said, provide an environment that encourages students to be comfortable speaking about topics regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion, along with the acceptance of behavioral or academic differences focusing on inclusion. So on the surface, at least, I basically agree with this idea. And so my question is, how do we ensure that all students or faculty even actually do feel comfortable speaking about these topics and not shamed into silence over disagreement regarding, let's say, anti-racist ideology or critical race theory, maybe not just the ideas, but the implementation as well. I believe that the diversity that constitutes the Pickerington schools requires the serious thought that we're attempting here. But I know that there's a widespread skepticism about how disagreement with, say, critical race theory, the orthodoxy underlying that at all levels will be handled, and how counter arguments can be integrated into the refinement and ongoing evolution of the DEI plan. So how do you plan on fostering a truly safe space for disagreement on these issues for both students and faculty in, honestly, a culture that's somewhat anxious to cancel wrongthink and dismiss dissent as maybe inherently racist or something like that? So how do you plan on to integrate these emerging critiques also into this plan as it develops and goes? So fostering a truly safe space, how do we do that for all perspectives, including dissent, fundamental dissent possibly, and how do we integrate those critiques in?
I can just comment, and obviously will certainly be a constant follow-up to this, but group 2, some of the things that came out in the very beginning with group 2 was our parents, first of all, I got the best group. Everybody's going to say they got the best group.
That's probably the best group.
Our group was made up of, we had one current high school student, a couple that really recently graduated. So we had a really nice cross section of recent students that could also give us insight. One of the things that came from the parents that came right off the bat was, my child needs to feel that not just safe, but there is someone that they can identify with, that they can go to, that they can, when things happen, that needs to be basically an open, an open person. Like, I can come to you with anything, not just race, but bullying, gender issues, the entire, we talk a lot about mental health. That's why the word behavioral type of things we'll put in there too. So we want a safe person. Not only do we want a safe space, we want a safe person. Well, instinctively, we're all going to say, well, every person needs to be safe. But until, we can project that every child should feel safe with every person, we at least want to identify a person that kids feel comfortable being with in every building. So that's identification. It's a go-to person. Some parents mentioned more like an anonymous, like almost like a suggestion thing, like, we've got a problem and this is, So opening those avenues for students, first and foremost, to be able to express issues that are going on. So that was the first piece, I think, of what is that. So because I didn't deal with the staff part, but dealing with the student part, the follow-up to that is, when I mentioned the panorama data, this data tells us how safe those students feel, or how listened to, or how included. That data gives us direct answers of how we're going to be doing with that. That's the bottom line. It's probably the most concrete data we can possibly have. It's not opinion, it's fact, and it's coming from the kid. And that was my focus, was the student part. So does that answer some of what you're asking as far as the students?
Yes, at some level. I think there's just a kind of a concern that the orthodoxy will be too heavy-handed in its application, and there'll be undue social pressure to conform in instances where sincere, and there are people who are flippant and will just disagree to be jerks, where there could be sincere dissent. And I would be concerned about not fostering an atmosphere where true diversity of thought, dissent, fundamental dissent or not, or just surface level, is allowed. I think as we implement something new, I would be concerned about
And
that
we would all be concerned.
with all of our kids, and it cuts both ways, or always. I shouldn't say both, just always. We should be concerned about that. And so I just was curious then how that's reintegrated. Will these critiques be continually brought before as we evaluate the DEI plan?
And that, I think, is the to be determined part of the plan, which we are just in it's still really in its infancy. I don't know how if anybody else feels, but that we're just, the community has given us the beginning, and they've given us their thoughts, their opinions, and the information of, this is what we feel, and this is how our kids feel. And we're just in the beginning of taking that then to the experts like we heard tonight, which is just the beginning of what are we going to do with, what is that going to look like? We understand now what people expect to see in schools and how we deal and embrace, and there's no right way, but we certainly want to do it, that we want to get it right. But I think everybody here feels I don't have a single answer. Nobody has a single answer. And we are all going to have to come together, I think, with her help. Because it's always great to have a facilitator that has been in these, as an educator that.
And I understand the lack of an immediate answer as this is beginning. I know that is a concern among several people, that that will be an ongoing concern. And so I just want to make you all aware of that ongoing concern. Sure. That I hope for the perfect success in every way as you handle that. But I just wanted to make sure that was out there and see if you had any immediate responses. So.
The other immediate response I'd like is my group did have the faculty staff part of that. And the biggest thing we were really hit home is we've got to provide the correct resources, the correct training, the correct education to those who are in charge of our students, who are the role models, who are in the classrooms and stuff. So again, what that it's going to be, no idea at this point, but that's the direction.
I think I might add to Dr. Howard's, and really it feels like what you're asking is how do we continue to have each person be unique and yet unified with what it is that we're trying to accomplish as a group, as people. I don't know. Your question made me think of that we're all unique individuals, and we're all hopefully working for the common good of all of our fellow human beings. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Come on up.
Good evening. My name is India Wilson. And I have a few questions, and they're specifically in relation to the report and presentation that Dr. Howard submitted this evening. And so my first question, and these are again in regard to the submitted report. My first question is, will the board now be voting to accept her proposal? If there is a vote, will the proposal be accepted in parcel or in its entirety? My second question, Dr. Howard indicated clear timelines in regard to beginning the search for and the hiring of a diversity, equity, inclusion director. Will the board be following the suggested timeline? And my last question, has a budget been relegated to support both the extensive DEI professional development needed for all staff, as well as has a budget been relegated to support not only the search, but the implementation and hiring of our diversity, equity, and inclusion director?
If you want me to go backwards, I can address question 3.
Sure.
Brian, could you let me show? Sure. This will be 2 birds with 1 stone. Everyone in the community will see all the financial reports we post. I'm giddy.
Okay.
So, Ms. Wilson, underneath, if you'll scroll back up, Brian, so folks can actually see all of our departmental high school, junior high financial reports. We list them for the community to consume.
And this is on your finances page,
Correct.
Yeah.
If you'll scroll down, what we have, there's a lot to add to this as far as for what is the right amount. You're correct. We need to be exercising a concerted effort. But Brian, if you don't mind, just to click on the summary budget activity right now, It'll be reports. Yeah, if you're at home, this is reports. It's just a generic.
Super secure.
Well, it's supposed to be generic.
Yeah.
So it's down there in your download tray. So what we've done for the duration of this school year, actually since we began this work, right now there's a budget of about 75,000. We know that that's not complete. We know that we need feedback. We know we need input from the CAC. We need to know what these things look like, but the areas that we've created for now, because we use Dr. Howard, that is a purchase service. And so that's why you see the 60,000 budgeted there for appropriation. We've got $5,000 right now for travel and meetings. And then we've got $10,000 right now budgeted for supplies. None of those things are chiseled in stone. We have to work through how to use those things, what's appropriate. The finances that you've seen so far as to what we've expended have been with Dr. Howard. But certainly we know there's recruiting this summer as HR goes out and about trying to get the right folks for our positions. There would be different supplies as they travel. So yes, we have intentionally created and will build on these budget areas as we move into the future. So not complete. We don't know, and that's part of why we're working with the CAC, with Dr. Howard. What are the right amount of resources? What is that? What do we invest? And we know that it will expand and grow because at this point in time, it's encompassing what we've done so far this year.
But to clarify, staffing would not show up on here. The only reason that Dr. Howard is showing up there is because it's a purchase service.
That's
It's not
correct.
that it could be
That's correct. But in the
a
future,
line item with all staffing, just so,
Correct.
just to clarify that wouldn't show up here anyways.
what you would see in the future is that same, if you look, you've got 0012175, that same function would be where we would hire a DEI coordinator or any other staff members who are in that functional area.
So you plan to separate that out on this?
That would be, we have a separate report for staffing. This will always be, this budget is what's set for services, supplies, equipment, not necessarily personnel, but you will still see that,
Yeah.
you'll still see that same functional area so that it's easy enough to always be able to report what we have also invested in personnel. Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And so just to clarify, this here is representative of the 2021
That's-
academic year.
That is correct.
And so-
And we have work to do for the future. In fact, this is going to be a blank slate starting July 1. Mhm. That's correct. And I don't disagree that what we saw in the recommendation from Dr. Howard, wasn't a question of if, but a when as to what's the appropriate structures to have in place and what does that look like as you develop a DEI coordinator. I concur that that's what her feedback was.
Good.
We also heard that too, though, as we know in some of our CAC groups as well.
I would just like to go back to the timeline that we talked about all during the CAC group. The timeline was that we weren't done. And bringing Dr. Howard in is only a piece of that. We still have her, yes, she put some suggested timelines in there. That doesn't mean that that's exactly where that'll land. That's really what the next 3 to 4 months has to be to finally get to the end of that plan. I mean, we committed to bring in the Pride Committee. And we haven't met with any of these people. Like, we've met with Dr. Howard for the first time tonight. So that's a start for us. Now, she's been working in our building. She's been working with our district office administrators. But it's bigger than that. It's still kind of everyone coming together and commenting and talking about timelines, talking about staffing, and really by the end of this summer, we had said all along from the very beginning, that's when a plan has to be finalized based on what we would like to, work going forward. So I know what she presents looks like it's a finished product, but it's the beginning.
I believe she called it
very nice. I think that's just my opinion.
Well, I would say in actuality, I understand what you're saying, and I don't think that she attempted to convey that it was a finished product. What I'm reading here, she has winter quarter 2 of the 2021 school year, begin hiring process for DEI Center Director. I mean, that could be as much as obtaining a search firm to do that work. That could be as much as, counting on your own HR department to handle that work. But she definitely has clarified when it should begin, and she's indicated at spring quarter 3, so I'm thinking the end of spring, finalize top contenders for DEI Center Director. So that does in fact give you the entire summer and first quarter, as well as the bulk of second quarter, to get a large step ahead in this movement, in this process.
Yes, if that's what finally everyone agrees that we are adopting.
Right, so then that speaks to my very first question. Right, so that speaks to my very first question. Is there a vote? Is the vote in parcel or is the vote in entirety? And what surrounds that? What entails that? Are we looking at input from the CAC? Will you be reconvening with the CAC? What does that look like?
Well, we're going to have them present in 2 weeks. They're going to come back so that the community can actually hear the presentation that we all heard, because we've already heard it. And it was done very well. So we're going to ask that to happen again, because that is all part of this process. So as far as a vote, I don't know how that would actually, it's not like you're.
And I think we need to be careful here with personnel issues too, because they don't come from the Board of Education. They obviously come from the superintendent. And so as we go through this process, we want to be clear that, when we're looking for a DE&I coordinator or supervisor, yes, we have a timeline and we want to do it the right way, share with the board, and go through the process with the CAC. And so from what I heard from Dr. Howard is exactly what you had said, India, is that, we're looking at the process and we're looking at starting the process. And part of that was tonight is having this discussion about what that looks like. I don't think the board is anywhere ready to make a commitment and say that we're on a strict timeline when we're still waiting to have some more input from the CAC. So, and that's the other piece that we're looking at when we look at personnel issues too, is we're also looking at what she recommended tonight is how we touch every building and the work that she's done with all 14 buildings. And we're also exploring ideas of how we put individuals in those buildings to work with our students directly. And that's a board, obviously something that we'll have a further discussion too with the board, because I think, to be honest with you, that's even more important than having a district office position, because, that directly impacts kids every day. And so we are exploring those options. We've had conversations with the board, and we'll continue to have those. And it'll be quick. And it's something that, we know the work is important. Obviously, we spent a lot of time on it, and we hope to have the right things in place moving forward. I just would think that it would be premature to tell you that we have set date in mind at this point. But at least we've had some discussions, and we'll continue to have them and move forward.
And I think it's important to understand that this is all public. We meet twice a month, public. Everything you see, you're welcome to follow along with us and keep, if you, and see where we're at and where we're going and moving forward. What you saw here tonight is where we're at. There is no other discussion that, hey, I've got plans in January that we're going to do this, and Lori has this plan going on. That's not how this works. This is a public, and we're moving forward, and where you see us right now is where we are right now. And we will continue at as fast a pace as we can, but we got to do it right. And and move forward one step at a time. So this is all public knowledge, and it's all, we do it all in front of everybody. And you along with everyone else is welcome to follow along right with us and go on this journey with us.
I think you might have a question that we've danced around, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe you have your answer, but I think what the board will approve out of Dr. Ariana Howard's involvement with the district is her contract. There's a threshold, but I believe that might be a prudent thing for this board to do, even if the dollar figure doesn't rise to the threshold. Ryan, you can smack me if I'm out of step here, but I think it might be appropriate for us to approve that publicly. And then to reiterate what's already been said, this is a work in process. I love a lot about what I heard tonight, and a lot of the little words on the proposal that are in the board docs file. I think the devil will be in the details. The timeline might not be exactly as presented, but it is very nice that she laid this out, and we do have some work to do to sync everything together. We've got these three teams, the CAC and the Pride and Dr. Ariana's proposal. I do hearken back and like what she emphasized about systemic change, which in any organization takes 3 to 5 years for it to be, to settle in. That's not news, I don't think, to anybody in a leadership role. But I think to your first question, the board will officially approve the contract. And then we need to step out of the details a little bit, let the administrative and the school staff, we'll get there. But our role regarding Dr. Ariana Howard will be to approve her contract.
Okay, so then it will ultimately then be up to you, Dr. Briggs. That's my understanding then, as far as the professional development, the extent of the professional development, exactly which buildings will be required to be involved in the professional development. That would then be up to you.
Yeah, and I think like I said, and I think what we've heard tonight is a good start, because we've had some of those conversations already. And I think when you look at our Department of Teaching and Learning, and you look at the involvement of the CAC, and you look at the involvement of Dr. Howard with our administrators, and it's a good start where we're at when we look at professional development. It's further than we were last year. And we're having some great discussion about this, and I think sometimes it's painful to have these discussions because it's out of our comfort zone, but the reality is we are moving forward, and it's not going to be at the pace that everybody likes, but I think we're getting and we're making some changes and we're moving the needle. It's just taking us a little bit of time. And I think as, what I saw tonight and what I hear is I'm encouraged. I'm encouraged in the direction we're headed. So yes, the professional development does come from the school administrators and working forward. The board, obviously, as Kathy said, looks at contracts. And then when we look at personnel, we work with the board in presenting the personnel plan to them in our strategy. So they're very involved. I don't want to say it's just the superintendent's decision. The board is very involved in those discussions as well as our district administrators. So absolutely, we'll present something.
I think the one thing too, though, that India might be indicative of what people are wondering is there going to be this final plan to see? And I think there will, just like if you get on our website and you go into every department, you can find the plans. They'll change and evolve, which is what we want. We don't want to be stagnant. So I think ultimately, will there be a DEI, evolving plan that people can actually see? Yes. It may not look exactly like every detail that the CAC started with, nor may it look it may not exactly look like what Dr. Ariana Howard did, or what the Pride Committee did. But those three entities really will be ultimately together in what that looks like. So it's the what is here. We're in the what stage. Now we have to determine how, who, and when that part of the plan. And she's certainly given us a lot of ideas. But the bottom line is, if we don't communicate it well, the community isn't going to know. And I think everyone here understands, we can put it on a website, but not everybody goes to the website. So I think the commitment to periodically, we ask people that served on that CAC if they would be willing to periodically come back. And the overwhelming response was yes. So the hope really is that the people that were involved from the beginning of this will also be the communicators to the people who don't go to the website, don't listen to board meetings, don't pick up the phone and call us. They will also be the communicators of what is going on with that. So that will be the key, because we can do a lot of good things. We all saw it in our groups. We had, people ask questions, and we had our people, this is what we do in this, but people don't always know what's going on. They said, oh, our kids didn't tell us that. Shock. So we have to be able to talk about what we are doing, what the plan is, and where it's going. Because if we can't communicate it and people don't know what we're doing, then for a lot of people, it just does not exist. So it's a huge ongoing change, and I think she spoke very well tonight, Dr. Howard did, about how long that will take us. So we want to be overachievers and not take 3 to 5 years for fundamental change, but keep working at it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Charles Newman, been in the district for 25 plus years. Before I make my statement, and you can start the timer, I want to remind that on 3:08 p.m. on April 15th, the official Twitter of the Pickerington Local School said at the Monday 19th meeting, the Board of Education would discuss how the district will successfully implement the plan of action created by the CAC. Now, I think a moment of transparency needs to happen. That was the intent for this evening, but because other things happened in this community, now we're seeing a board recanting what you had the intention to do, according to your communications department, was to implement a successful implementation, as you put it. Now we're here and we're being told, oh, we're still in the fact finding. So I would love for someone to explain to me the difference between implementation and now we're still finding. But I'll start off with my statement in the 2 minutes that I have. Dr. Martin Luther King stated, justice delayed is justice denied. It means that if legal redress or equitable relief to our injured party is not available, but is not forthcoming in timely fashion, it is effectively the same as having no remedy at all. Let me quote board member Kathy Olszewski in one of her responses to a statement made by the Pickerington Black Parents Network regarding the hiring of a DE&I position. She stated, not all 5 CAC committees advocated for the hiring of a director of DEI. Specifically, the subcommittee that I facilitated, in parentheses, curriculum, did not. Staffing was not our focus. This statement, along with the comments on the issue from other board members, which as of today was none, shows the priority that this key element to change has from the district leadership and board. Let me also point out that Dublin, Westerville, Hilliard are all districts similar in size and mixture of population as Pickerington, and they had the foresight to hire a DE&I director. Bexley, which is much smaller than PLSD, has recognized the need for a DEI and is in the process of hiring one. As a plan of action was released by the district and was set to be implemented or told how it was going to be implemented today, these are my questions. Who on this board who has been silent on the issue feels they have the qualifications to implement a plan of DEI? Who in the district leadership team that includes no minorities are qualified to implement this change? Dr. Briggs, in my few opportunities to meet with him, made this statement over, and I believe is one of the most meaningful statements he has ever made. And that is 3 words: I don't know. Maybe you will suggest implementation will come from the building principals, who have shown to be a group that includes persons who are the center of the dilemma we are facing. Or will it be another daunting task that the teachers must add to their everyday workload as they navigate the different personalities and obstacles of the classroom? By now, it should be clear that we need a specific person to not only lead DE&I, but lead the implementation of any plan that this board and this district leadership feels would be equitable to our district. The financial commitment must occur for the upcoming school year. We can't wait any longer. I appreciate Dr. Howard in stating that in Q2. What Dr. Howard does not have is the personal experience as a Black student and as a Black parent of a Black student in this district who has been seeing that nothing has been done. Please make the right commitment today and the right decision and hire someone to come in and handle diversity, equity, and inclusion in our district.
Good evening. My name is Christian Johnson. I just have follow-up questions as well. As my understanding, it is the board's responsibility, number one priority, to make sure that everyone in the community, specifically our students, feel safe in the environment which we educate them. However, it is shown time and time again that sports are prioritized before. So I want to present this question to the board. You have mentioned that you don't have a timeline for when a DEI specialist will be contracted for the district. However, you have a timeline for the levy. You have a timeline for when you want sports fields built. You have a timeline for when we even had our students go back to school prematurely, in my opinion. You have a timeline for everything else, and we talk about the safety of our students. However, in all of this rhetoric, we have students who do not feel safe in their environment because of their color. We have our teachers who do not feel safe in their environment because of their color. We have administrators who do not feel safe in their environment because of their color. So where is your priority when it comes to the safety and the respect of the students, most specifically those of minority? That's my question for today.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Does anybody want to comment?
Go ahead.
I would just say that because was several pieces of information out there, I'm not sure what got sent out there when, but we've stated what the timeline is here, and quite frankly, anyone who was involved in the CAC knew all along that this process wasn't done when the CAC finished their research. It was actually phase one of at least 2 phases, and that we had no intention of having a full-fledged finalized plan in place until probably the end of this summer. And that's quite frankly just a logistical thing. It's the reality that when May 31st comes, if you are not a 260-day employee in this district, your job is done. So we are trying to keep part of the core administrative team, plus the Pride Committee and anyone else involved, and it will be in a continuation. What you didn't see tonight is the detail. Well, we are not going to dive in without the detail, and I would hope people will respect that. That detail is not for the board to determine. It is for the administration to determine. Obviously, we are here to support it. We're here to support recommendations for staffing. We're here to support any program or plan changes that may or may not occur. So we are all extremely sensitive to the fact that we all want everything done yesterday. We get that. It's not realistic. We are working on it. We have been working on it for 9 months. We know it's not fast enough. The fact of the matter is we are working. We will continue to work. We are available. All the information is public. We can add an update. For the longest time, we actually had an update every month on our board agenda. We made comments of where the CAC was, the study that was going on. So we feel like we're really trying to communicate where we are with everything. And
You can't say that after we requested meetings.
the fact of the matter is, The fact of the matter is, you asked
Kids are suffering every day.
You ask for a meeting of 3 board members. That's a quorum. It's not legal. This is the only place you can get 3 board members into the room. That is a legal quorum. That's not my rule. That is the government's rule.
Please explain how else we're supposed to have a conversation with you about the issues if this is the only place where we can communicate our issues.
You're more than welcome.
You say we're open to communication, we're open. But if this is the only form we can get through to you, and we have 3 minutes, and then you keep dancing around all of the questions that we keep asking, how can we further move the needle on what's been going on in this district for years? Even in Dr. Howard's reporting, only 7 out of the 14 schools decided to continue.
We don't know the reason why. It may only be 7 at a time. I'm not here to argue. We are not here to argue. We have listened.
Oppressed people are tired of being oppressed. This is what happens, that we've done it the right way. We've done it. We sent letters. We've reached out to you. We've met with our kids. These are our babies.
Yes.
Our babies. So don't say that you worked hard for 9 months.
The CAC has worked.
Because for 9 months, every African American in this community has sat back for you all to not do anything. To not be hands-on.
He's out of line.
Give us 2 minutes and
He's out of
30
line.
seconds to speak and have
He's out of line.
to not even acknowledge what we said.
We're acknowledging that we have heard you.
We need to take control of this meeting.
He's out of line.
So,
Nope.
all right, sir,
We owe you the opportunity to keep
Sir.
on our behalf.
okay,
Nothing has been done. And what you're
Thank you.
saying is frustrating
okay.
African-American parents.
So I'm going to entertain a motion to go into executive session per 121-22G1 and 4. We tried.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second, we tried.
Mr. Jenkins, can you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Niekamp?
Mr. Jenkins, can you call the roll, please?
You don't want it publicly, you don't want it privately. So the minute we bring the news people coming in, that's the only thing that makes it list. There are people in line to speak.
Okay.
They need to,
Thank you.
they should probably be.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Thank you,
Okay,
Vanessa.
thank you. You want to come forward, ma'am?
My name is Alyssa Griffin, and I am a member of the CAC. I'm also on the Key Communicators Committee, among other committees throughout the district. This is a district that I fought for my child to go to, and it's one that I believe in. However, I do recognize that with the privilege of my skin color, that my baby does not have the same experience as the Black and brown students here in the district. What I would like to see, or answered by the board, is what are we going to do to help make this better? I understand the CAC, and there was a very lengthy email thread that went out that started at like 8 o'clock last night. And
No, it was
we're-
11:30 PM, but that's okay.
We were regardless, it started, and there was a long conversation. But I do believe that this needs to be addressed by the board, be it publicly, because the Pickerington Black Parents Network has done tireless work on their own, and this should not be shouldered by them by themselves. And that's part of why I'm here. I want our Black and brown parents and their students to know that Pickerington is a safe place for them, even though I know personally that it's not. This is something that needs to change. I know it's going to take time, but moving to an executive session when things get heated is not the way to do it. Moving to an executive session is just running and hiding from the problem. And running and hiding from the problem is not going to solve anything. That's part of why we are where we are today. I want us to do better because we deserve to do better by our Black and brown students because they deserve better. And that's all. I yield back my minute and a half.
Thank you.
My name is Shaniqua Dunbar. I am a graduate of Pickerington, now Central, from 97. It's really sad to stand here and see that there's still the same problems from when I graduated. I graduated back in 97. So I stand here because my son is supposed to feel safe at school, just as at home. And when he can be wrongfully accused of a substitute teacher just specifically saying that she saw a bag fall out of his book bag and assumed that it's drugs, and he's pulled out of the middle of his test. And that was in October until today. Still today, no one has said what has happened to that substitute teacher, what has been done, what classes. I suggested all types of things, and nothing has happened. My son has not been the same. He does not feel safe in this school. Everything he's worked hard to not have someone look at him as has definitely not changed, not anything. I was told that there's a shortage of substitute teachers. So that's why we have this teacher here. And that's why she continued to be there after I specifically stated that my son would not be safe. Does not feel safe having a teacher who accused him of something like that in his class. So how? I know we said that there is a timeline, but the time is now. We have kids, Black and brown kids, not feeling safe for reasons like no one can explain. Except that, well, we have to have substitute teachers. We have a shortage. I'm sorry, but we have a shortage. No one has followed up with my child to see how that has affected him, because it has. This has been since October. I haven't gotten an email from Principal Yulbrick. I haven't gotten an email for, I think, Hudak, anyone that was in that meeting to say, hey, we just checked up on your son. Here's what has been done with that substitute teacher. So no, students aren't feeling safe. And so this timeline, oh, it takes time. I graduated in 1997. How much time do we need? Thank you.
My name is Vanessa Hayes Williams, and I promise you I will be short.
Vanessa, can you tip your microphone up?
Oh, turn it up.
Just tip it up, tip it up.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
I had the pleasure of serving on Group 5 of the CAC. I do believe that there are some things that have been shared today that are worth just saying that you will look into the situation. We were provided a timeline from Dr. Howard. Unfortunately, we never got to meet with her. So the idea of having a conversation or dialogue that helped us to realign things never took place. I was happy to hear her today. However, I do believe that conversation needs to take place. My understanding is that she was able to read our recommendations. However, there are a couple things that we were not able to clearly communicate, and it would serve us well if we sat down and had that conversation with her. In addition to that, I do want to encourage you to look at the timeline that she provided. I too believe that hiring a director, a DEI director, will not solve all problems. Some things are systematic. Some things need to start at the district level, such as hiring and promoting. I think that to hire a director in the middle of a school year in January, to me, that doesn't even make sense. That's asking for chaos when we already have a lot of issues at hand. What I would encourage you to do is go back to your hiring manager and look at your retention and your hiring plans and start to develop a plan to look at hiring minorities, African Americans, brown people, people that look like our students. That's not something that a DI director will actually help you with. You can do that now. There were some things that we shared with you that were quick wins. I know I personally have had conversations with Mr. Jenkins. I believe that that needs to be opened up. I need to know who else should we be talking with in the district. Yes, there was an email that went out. And one of the things I have consistently said on all my calls is that if you don't start developing a platform that allows people to be heard and responsibly responded to culturally, this is what you get. People are going to voice their concerns. There was a little disappointment in how the email was responded to from the district. And I'm not quite sure if all the responsible parties should have said some of the things that they did. However, that needs to be looked at. If an email is sent to, and all due respect, Superintendent, if an email is sent to you, in order for me to have trust in you, you need to respond. Even if it's a response, I am going to get my assistant superintendents. I'm going to get my treasurer. All due respect to Mr. Jenkins, but he's wearing a lot of hats. And I think that sometime, I got it, he knows the history and the legacy of Pickerton, but it's changing. And we need to incorporate more people. I always talk about champion leadership. Champion leadership means not only internal leaders, but external leaders within our community, our parents and our caregivers. I think there are some things in Ms. Howard's report that needs to be looked at again. What she presented tonight is not the same thing that she sent out in writing yesterday. And that was an emotional response that you heard today. Now, I would like to move forward and figure out how will we start meeting with other community groups. It's a simple question. That's something you all can decide tonight.
I don't want to interrupt you. Can I ask a clarifying question? You said what, Dr. Howard? Maybe I misheard what you
That's
said.
Mr. Jenkins, he knows. Mr. Jenkins, the document that was shared with us for year one, year two, was that shared with the rest of the staff or the rest of the work?
It's actually in the docs, yeah.
Okay,
But you said it's different than what was sent out today?
right. So one of the things she talked about that actually stood out to me was the hiring of a DEI director. And she said it's going to take place in January of 2021. It's too late.
You mean 2022?
Yeah, the timeline she provided in the document was to take the summer and the fall to build the capacity we needed to understand exactly what this role would be, what it would entail, build so that we didn't bring in someone and just kind of kick it in and say, go at it.
Yeah.
So the document talked about building the necessary capacity for a DEI coordinator, and then to make the decision. Ms. Hayes Williams is accurate that the document then said in the winter or late fall. I mean, if you want to divide at December 31st versus January 1.
And actually, all the measurable outcomes are not until January.
So that particular topic was, I know, and certainly folks could think that it's too long. I can't speak to too long versus too short. I can only tell you that our intention and our goal was to make sure we had the necessary structures in place so that that was successful.
Yes.
Rather than to make a decision and struggle right from the get-go with someone who was overwhelmed with no clear direction, no foundation, no work, that's been completed from a board and district office perspective that sets the right structures in place. It is imperative that the change that we seek is, as everyone has noted, systemic and rooted in a firm foundation that begins at all levels.
However,
in the top.
as the chief financial officer, then you would also know, because one of my questions to you earlier was about, we got to follow the money. And based on what you presented today, it was a $75,000 line item, which $60,000 is going towards her contract. $5,000 is going towards supplies. So that leaves $10,000 for what I'm assuming, and forgive me if I'm wrong, recruiting and hiring of a director, $10,000.
So those numbers,
Maybe I'm wrong in my numbers.
her contract is not necessarily at this point in time $60,000. Those, well,
That's the budget.
that's what is currently on that appropriation. But
Right.
the appropriation can be modified.
Right.
So if you look at the bottom, the budget of $75,000, you could just as easily prioritize and know that recruiting and training is going to, instead of saying $60,000 is on the professional development or professional services line, you could just as easily move $20,000 to training. So
Respectfully, I understand that. I used
Yeah.
to move money around all the time
Yep.
for NIH. So I understand that. However, I do believe that there are some things that you all need to have answers to.
Sure.
And you can have answers to. You can have answers to when you will hire more minorities in the district. You can have questions to what your recruitment plan looks like to ensure that. I mean, those are things that you can answer those questions. And I don't understand why, you're not doing those things. That's the only thing I'm saying. You talked about CAC. Wonderful group. But my question and my understanding is there's no date that has been provided or a schedule when they will be brought back. The last conversation I had was that they will be brought back in the fall, but that's too late. I'm sorry, I've been in education for 15 years on different levels. The first golden rule I learned was that we work in the summer. That's when all the work takes place. So I would strongly encourage you to go back and rethink that, because at this point, you might want to bring CAC back, since I've heard you all today mention them, and start that work going on. And maybe that would help with the timeline.
I know our first step, I thought we decided earlier tonight, was to bring the CAC back on March the 3rd. Yeah, correct? Isn't that what-
May 3rd.
Yeah, sorry, March. Where am I going?
summarize,
Backwards.
yes.
Yeah, May 3rd.
Right.
I'm ready to work. I know a couple of people on our committee are ready to work. Maybe we can be the individuals that are meeting with other groups to help you all along the way. As Dr. Briggs has said, it's not the board that is running the show, it's him.
Well, I mean,
I don't think I
Let's
quite
just-
put it that way, but
let's put it this way. We're all on the same team, regardless of who the individuals are.
Well, two people report to the board, and that's the superintendent and the treasurer. So we're at the top. We lead, we fly at about 30, 40, 50,000 feet. We set expectations, goals.
And so have y'all set expectations for this, and we go through this as a board?
The bottom line is the board started the community advisory committee, the citizen advisory committee, because we are the only entity that can start that. It's a board committee. No, that's what our work this summer is supposed to be.
With the Pride Committee.
With the Pride
And
Committee,
Dr. Howard.
the administrators and staff that
Dr.
were
Howard.
on the CAC and Dr. Howard. So yes, that's what our summer work was. I can't hear.
Well, can the community hold us accountable for that? Yes, work will continue over the summer.
Sure.
And regarding this issue of communication and speaking to the board and sharing your thoughts and ideas, we're elected by you, and we want to hear from you. Most of the information, candidly, don't laugh. I've never received an email unless you've been a part, excuse me, I've never received an email from the community unless it's been a part of the CAC or I've seen it on social media, give or take a handful of examples here and there. Our contact information is all available on the district website. You can probably find us through social media and other manners. But candidly, we want to communicate with you. And when I extend an olive branch to an individual to meet with him, and then all of a sudden it becomes a request for a full board meeting, we can't do that legally. As Mrs. Sanders said, we can't do that. We're not going to break the law to set up a special meeting. Contact us, meet with two of us together. That's legal. Call us. I'll pay for a cup of coffee. But guys, it's got to be a two-way communication. And so, you know, we're all open and interested and willing to talk to you. But please don't say that you don't know how to communicate with us. There's a ton of ways. And there's a ton of information about this topic that has been blasted both on the district website and on some of our personal social media platforms. But Christian, don't interrupt, please.
What you're saying goes for everybody on the board. So no matter who we contact on the board.
If you contact us collectively, you will be, we will.
Individually, like you said, we can contact you individually with meetings individually. So
If you'd like, it's up to the individual board members to whether or not they want to take that meeting or phone call or whatever. But guys, we are public servants to you. We may disagree, and that's okay. But, you know, candidly, this is healthy, but I think sitting down in small groups is healthy too. So please don't come before us and tell us that we're unavailable to talk to you. That's unfair. Seriously unfair. And listen, some of you in this room were asked to sit on the CAC and your participation wasn't great. So read the stuff, ask us questions. We're an open book.
Members of the board, I wanted to add one thing. Mr. Newman had asked about the word "will implement." I'll be the first person to own the fact that I helped to write that statement. Mr. Newman, whether it could be deemed after the fact that you missed the mark with using the words "will implement" were a part of implementation, as in the work continues, not that tonight was the end-all be-all. I bring that up too because I had spoken to another member of the CAC. That was absolutely my bad. I'll own it. That "will implement" was not meant to be that tonight was a decision-making crossroads. It was a discussion. It was organic. It was, we will begin the implementation process of all the things that we've heard. So I'll own those words. They were not intended to set anybody up for the belief that tonight was a decision and a pulling of a trigger, so to speak, on a plan. We know we have those plans that have been developed with our CAC, with our Pride Committee, but we continue the work, and I think that's a good thing, but I wanted to make sure I put that out there. So if that happened, that was my fault, and we deal with it and we move forward, that we're trying to still do good things together.
I think we're done. I think we have a motion and a second for executive session. Yep. Mr. Jenkins, can you call roll, please?
Yeah, 1 second. Mrs. Niekamp.
Yes.
Mr. Kristoff.
Yes.
Mrs. Sanders.
Yes.
Mr. Lopez.
Yes.
Mrs. Olszewski.
Yes.